Hello, my name is Cheng. I'm from Stanford Real Lab, and today I'll show you how to assemble the mechanical parts of the UMI gripper. And you need to have all the 3D printed parts available, the TPU printed soft fingers available, a linear rail with 2 carriages, a spring, and a box of M3 screws, a Allen key that's a little longer, super loop, 3M grip tape, and a scissor. One thing you want to be aware of is that it's hard to get a linear rail with 2 carriages on it. Because the precision of these cheap Amazon linear rails are pretty pathetic, you can't expect to get a linear rail carriage combo and buy a separate carriage that putting the carriage on the rail is going to work. Usually it will be very unsmooth. The most reliable solution I found is that you get 2 linear rails from the same manufacturer, and then you try to transfer one carriage to the other rail. Like this. Now, moving this carriage to this rail make it even less smooth. That means that this rail has tighter tolerance than the other one. Because we don't need the precision anyway, we just want the tolerance to be loose. So what we want to do now is to transfer both of these carriages to the other rail. Now, both of them move smoothly. This is what we want. All right, let's get started. First, I usually start with the build plate and to put the linear rail onto the base plate. So sometimes I don't even remember what size of screw to put on. So I usually just give it a try. So I put this in. Okay, doesn't stick out too much. Sounds good. I usually don't tighten it too much in the first try before I finish putting in all the screws, and I'll tighten it afterwards. As you can see, I start with the two side screws for linear rail. Okay, do not over tighten the screws. Alright, make sure everything is smooth. Next step is I usually put on the grip. And as you can see, there are 2 screws in the front that go through the linear rail to the base plate and then to the grip. I usually do the 2 screws in back first. And again, I usually just do try and error to figure out what size of the screw is the best. So, okay, this one doesn't stick out too much. Looks the right one. Sometimes you need to, so see here, I made a mistake. The bolt is not put in, the nut is not in the correct orientation. I usually use another screw to extract the stock bolt, the stock nut. Put in the right orientation, perfect. Now these 2 probably need someone longer, so let me give it a try. Yeah, this one looks right. Yep. All right. The next thing I usually do is to install the finger holders to make sure that when it's installed, it should be like this. This is the left. And I think this uses M3 by 8 screws. First loosely install all four of them. After they're all secured, tighten it in the order that goes by diagonal. Again, do not over tighten it, otherwise you're gonna break the plastic. Just stop until you feel a little bit of pressure. When you hear the plastic crack, that means that you use too much force. Do not do that. Okay, so after tightening the two finger holders, you want to make sure first they move smoothly. Number two, you want to look from the side to see that they're mostly parallel. Otherwise, you screw up one of the screws. So the next step is to put the gears and linkage into the gripper. You want to have the linkage in the bottom, the gear at the top, and then if you have the gear facing forward, the linkage on the gear should be facing inside of the gripper. So now I usually put these two as a whole. Carefully align the tooth with the tooth on the finger holder. As you can see, if it's aligned, it will mesh perfectly. There's like one-to-one correspondence with all the teeth. Same for the other side. And just again, make sure everything rotates smoothly. Next step is to put in the handle. And eventually what we want is to have the handle with the spring inside, and then make it drop like this. But before we do that, we want to apply the lubricants. So we used super loop. Before we apply the lubrication, basically, imagine I'm holding a gripper like this, and I'm squeezing on the handle. This will cause the the grip to rotate this way, and first exert a lot of force on the top plate. Therefore, we need a lot of lubrication on this side, but also on all four sides of the handle. I usually just apply with my finger. Apply a thick layer of lubricant on top, and then a little bit on the side and the bottom. Now we push the spring inside of the handle, drop the handle inside the gripper, and make sure all the linkages are perfectly aligned. And drop it in just a little bit so that you can push the spring into the retainer, like this, and then drop it in completely. Now we need to close the top lid, and before we do that, again, apply lubricants on the bottom at places where it's gonna in contact with the handle. Before you tighten the screws, just simply squeeze the back of the top plate, and then just open and close the gripper a little bit. It should be very smooth, otherwise something else is wrong. Now it's putting on screws. I think we need M3 by 25 millimeters. Looks like the right side. Get some nuts. Two more, here and here. Okay, next step is to put on the cube. Originally, it's designed to have RU tags on all four sides for tracking, but later on we decided not to do that. But it's still important to install the cube for proper balance on the gripper. Install the cube. I think we need two M3 by 8 screws. I usually directly put the screw on the cube, and then push the whole thing onto the base plate, and then install the nut. All right, so we have the PLA parts of the gripper completely assembled. The next step will be to install the fingers. I first usually put on the grip tape. And to do that, I usually wrap the grip tape around by like a few inches. And then do like this. Same for the other side. Okay. Next step is put the finger into the holder. What you want to do is installs in this orientation. You squeeze it in, and you need 3 M3 by 35mm screws, which I think is this one. I usually go through the middle one first. Same for the other side. It's important to know that you should never over tighten these screws, because when you're squeezing in, the inner part as rigid TPU is deformable, And if you just keep clamping too much, it will cause the PLA part to deform and eventually break. If it doesn't hold, doesn't match the if it doesn't go out the other side perfectly, you might want to push the finger a little bit. Now we're done with the mechanical part of the UMI gripper. And the next, we want to install the mirrors, the RU tag, and also the GoPro. Okay, this is the last step for building the UMI gripper. We'll be building the mirror, the RU tag, as well as putting on the GoPro. You will need a sheet of plastic mirrors, a printed piece of paper that has the RU tags on it. When you're printing the tags, it's very important to manually set the scales to 100%. Double-sided tape. You want the type that actually has the white backing on it. This is usually more secure. And then you want scissors, GoPro, the GoPro screw, and a M5 nut. All right, let's do it. First, I'll be putting on the tag. I usually just flip to the other side and then apply the double-sided tape. And then I'll just cut it out. Note that I have a bunch of other tags. Those are unused. You really need only these two per every piece of paper. You want to cut a little bit inside of the black line, such that the boundary of the resulting tag is pure white. Okay, now we have the two tags. Note that it has numbers. It has 0, 0, and 0, 1. So 0, 0 is on the left and 0, 1 is on the right. If you look at carefully, look at the fingers. On the finger holder, we have this faint square-shaped mark on that we have in our 3D printed files. What you want to do is to align the tag perfectly with the square. All right, remove the paper backing. And then carefully stick it onto the finger. Same for the other side. And look for the square and stick on the tag. Okay. Next step is the mirror. So you don't have to be super precise. What I usually do is I will just measure roughly where is the mirror, and then I will make a marking. Okay, with these faint lines, I just directly cut it out. Okay, roughly the right size. After this, I'll just do some finer adjustments. For example, cutting up the 45-degree angle. So these two cuts are to avoid people getting hurt because the edges are kind of sharp. Again, remove the paper backing on the side. And repeat for the other side. Right size. Then you want to remove the thin protective film on the mirror. Okay. Finally, the last step is to install the GoPro. You want to have the max lens already installed. You want to have the screw from the left side and not on the right side. That's it. You have your complete UMI paper, and now you can collect data outside.